Harold Frederick Shipman was born January 14, 1946 in Nottingham, England, the middle child in a working-class family. From a young age his life seemed ordinary. He went to medical school at the University of Leeds, qualified as a doctor, and from around 1970 began his career in hospitals before moving into general practice. He was regarded by many as a competent GP, a family doctor, someone people trusted with their lives and their loved ones' care. To neighbors and patients he was a reassuring presence, often making home visits, friendly, caring, the kind of doctor you hope to trust. Little did they know that behind the white coat lurked a darkness few imagined. Between 1975 and the late 1990s, deaths began to cluster unusually among his patients. Elderly patients, often alone, often under his care. Most died quietly at home, painlessly, often after what seemed like simple injections. Their deaths were signed off as natural causes, old age, expected decline. Families felt grief, disbelief, but not suspicion. After all, their trusted doctor had treated them carefully, compassionately. What made this pattern so evil was its invisibility. The doctor visited, administered what he said was pain relief or sedation. Patients died soon after. There was rarely an autopsy. Cremations were common, records disappeared, causes marked on death certificates looked legitimate. Over decades, the unseen death toll grew, time, age, and the doctor's credibility hiding unimaginable horror. The turning point came in 1998, with the death of a wealthy patient named Kathleen Grundy, an elderly widow and former local mayor. On June 24, 1998, she died under Shipman's care. Soon after her death, her daughter, a solicitor, was shocked to receive a will in which Kathleen had left everything to Dr. Shipman, excluding her own children. That bizarre anomaly triggered alarm. Questions followed. Why would a healthy elderly woman leave her estate to her doctor? The daughter reported suspicions to the police. Investigators exhumed Grundy's body, which revealed high levels of an opiate, the same kind of drug Shipman used on many patients. That began the unraveling of the doctor's facade. Police dug through decades of deaths, prescriptions, patient records. The horror beneath his seemingly serene practice began to open up. On September 7, 1998, Shipman was formally arrested. The investigation was immense, sifting through hundreds of death certificates, patient files, exhumations, witness statements. Evidence mounted. Injections of lethal doses of morphine, a powerful opioid, in patients who had been healthy or only mildly ill. Sudden unexplained deaths. Forged wills, computer records altered to fabricate symptoms and causes of death. During a trial in 2000, the prosecution focused on 15 individual murder cases. Victims whose deaths were supported by concrete forensic evidence and suspicious patterns. The jury found him guilty of all 15 murders, plus one count of forgery. The judge sentenced him to life in prison, under a whole life tariff, meaning no possibility of release. Shipman denied guilt throughout, never confessed, never expressed remorse. But those 15 convictions were just the tip of the iceberg. A major public inquiry, chaired by Dame Janet Smith, was commissioned to examine the true scale of Shipman's crimes. The inquiry reviewed nearly 500 death cases linked to him, exhumed bodies, compared death rates of his patients with national averages, and studied prescribing and certification practices. The report concluded that Shipman likely killed at least 215 patients, possibly more, with a final official estimate around 250 victims. The victims were primarily elderly, many women, but included men. Their deaths had been recorded as natural, often with no external signs of foul play. The conclusion struck the medical community and society at large with horror. A trusted doctor had abused his position for decades, hidden among the most helpless and vulnerable. The inquiry's findings raised serious questions about the safeguards in medical practice, death certification, prescription, and post-mortem requirements. How could one man kill hundreds without detection? The report criticized systemic failures, lack of oversight on controlled drugs, inadequate checks on death certificates, insufficient regulation of home visits, and a medical culture inclined to trust doctors unconditionally. It underlined that coroners, registrars, regulators had failed to spot trends that, statistically, should have raised alarms much earlier. Families of victims, many elderly and vulnerable, had no reason to suspect. Meanwhile, for those left behind, grief was compounded by betrayal. The person they trusted most had killed them. Trust shattered. Public reaction was immediate and widespread. Media outlets dubbed him Dr. Death. Shock waves rippled through Britain and worldwide. For many, it shattered the faith in the sanctity of care, the assumption that a doctor is always a healer. Families brought lawsuits, communities demanded reforms, medical regulators re-examined protocols, the public demanded transparency. Schools of medicine reevaluated training on ethics, monitoring of narcotics prescriptions became stricter, and general practitioners' practices changed forever. The legacy of the murders extended beyond individual tragedies. It forced a reckoning of trust, oversight, and vulnerability in healthcare. Shipman's life ended behind bars. On January 13, 2004, aged 57, he was found hanged in his cell at Wakefield Prison. His death raised questions and conspiracy theories. Did he act alone? Did he have an accomplice? Was the full truth ever known? Official investigations found no credible evidence of a second person. His suicide denied victims' families a final answer, a confession, remorse. He died maintaining silence. The prisons cremated his body or kept it in custody for years to prevent any memorialization. But by then, the damage had been done. The victims, nameless in many cases, the families left with grief and unanswered questions, and a medical profession shaken to its core. In the aftermath, the case of Harold Shipman triggered reforms across the UK's National Health Service and beyond. Regulations on prescribing and monitoring controlled drugs tightened. Death certification and post-mortem procedures became more rigorous. The role of independent checks, coroners, registrars was reinforced. The medical profession reconsidered the weight of trust versus accountability. Many medical regulators admitted that prior systems had provided no safeguard at all against such abuse of power. Shipman's crimes became a grim benchmark, a warning for what can happen when oversight fails. Beyond statistics, beyond reforms, lies the human tragedy. Hundreds of lives lost, families destroyed, innocents betrayed. Elderly patients died trusting a doctor's help. Their peaceful deaths became murders. Many of them never had autopsies, many were cremated, their deaths attributed to natural causes. The real number of victims may never be known. Behind every number was a person. A mother, a father, a friend, a neighbor. Their names lost, their stories seldom told. The horror of Harold Shipman is not in the body count alone, but in the betrayal of trust, the transformation of the doctor, the healer, into an instrument of death. The story of Harold Shipman remains one of the darkest in modern medical history. It challenges our faith in institutions, in professions we trust, in the idea that anyone who wears a white coat must be there to heal. It serves as an example of how evil can hide in plain sight, how trust can be weaponized, how our systems must guard against blind faith. For survivors, for families, for communities, this story is a painful memory. For the world, it is a cautionary tale. And as long as people remember, they must also ask, are we safe when we trust? Are we vigilant when we depend? Because sometimes death comes in a doctor's coat, quietly, slowly, and under the guise of care.